Hey, Mike with Nerd Problems Gaming here, and today's video we'll be covering another new Nintendo Switch eShop sale and 10 more great games worth buying, so let's get into it. So the first game on today's list is Trinity Trigger. Now Trinity Trigger is an old school inspired action RPG brought to modern consoles, and so it follows the story of two gods, one chaos and one order, that have been at war for millennia. And what they do is choose different humans to represent them as warriors to battle it out to see who gains control of the world. And so you actually play as a young hero, Cyan, who ends up being the warrior of the chaos side. And so you go on an interesting adventure, unraveling the mystery of this feud. And the gameplay is an action RPG, as I mentioned. And heroes will have a variety of different triggers, which are little animal-based monsters that can actually transform into the weapons that you use throughout the game. You'll also have a stamina bar in combat where you'll unleash abilities and over time that can drain. And if it gets fully drained, that makes your attacks weaker, so you'll need to actively manage that throughout battle. The combat is fast-paced and it has challenging bosses as well. On top of that, it has a unique level-up mechanic where you gain points throughout battle, and then you can use those to power up your different abilities. You'll also collect a variety of gems you can use to further upgrade your equipment and unlocking additional abilities. There's crafting and a huge world to explore, and so if you're looking for a cool action RPG, I definitely recommend it. The next game on today's list is Xiomi and the Flame Dragon's Fist. Now this game is heavily inspired by the retro action game Kung Fu, which was really one of the first beat-em-up style games. And so this game plays out in a similar fashion where it's a 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up style game. And it has that old school arcadey feel as well. They've definitely modernized the graphics a bit since the original Kung Fu. And now it plays out in more of a 16-bit style. And you'll play as a young heroine as she goes on a quest to try and save her sister. Eventually, once you beat the game as well, you'll be able to play through as her sister in more of a prequel that leads up to the events of the initial main game. The gameplay, while a little bit simplistic, is quite fun if you enjoy these side-scrolling, early arcade-style beat-em-ups. And the gameplay can definitely be pretty challenging, like those earlier classics as well. The game isn't super long, but as I said, it's pretty challenging, so you'll need to get pretty good if you hope to beat this game. But if you're looking to play a classic beat-em-up style game, I think you'll enjoy this one as well. The next game on today's list is Gal Guardian's Demon Purge. Now when this first came out, it was also called Grim Guardian's Demon Purge, but there were some issues with the naming of the game. But they're definitely the same game, just a swap in the title. But this game is really a Castlevania-inspired action platformer. It does have some limited Metroidvania elements as well. But overall, the game is definitely a lot more linear and features great action platforming. And so the story of the game is you play as two sisters who are demon hunters, and their high school and all of their high school friends have been transported to an alternate demonic dimension, and you go on a quest to restore your world, bring your high school and all of your friends back to the real world. And so there's two main protagonists that you can play as. One of the sisters has dual-wielding machine guns for her weapons, so she has more ranged attacks. And then the other sister focuses on more melee, close combat attacks using magical origami. And so throughout the game, you'll unlock additional abilities that you'll find after defeating bosses and scattered throughout the game. And as I mentioned, it is more linear, but you do have the option of a stage select. So as you explore through the game and find new abilities, you are able to go back and find some other branching paths and unlock some different power-ups for your characters. And so it doesn't feel like a full-fledged Metroidvania, more of a classic traditional Castlevania action platforming style game, but there are some hidden secrets throughout the game as well. Another really cool element is that you can swap characters on the fly and each have their own health bar. And so this can be an extensive part of surviving throughout the game. If you like classic action platformers and the Castlevania series, I would definitely recommend checking out this game as well. The next game on today's list is Shovel Knight Dig. Now this game is a prequel of sorts to the indie classic Shovel Knight, and this time around you'll play as Shovel Knight again, but you'll be taking on a new villain, the evil Drill Knight. And so this game is more of a roguelike experience, And so you'll be diving into dungeons in a vertical fashion where you'll be digging through the ground, searching for treasure, and defeating enemies and taking on challenging bosses. And so the platforming can get pretty intense. And another added element that creates even more intensity is that there's kind of a massive drill blade that will come down from the top of the screen if you happen to be moving too slow through the dungeon, and it can be an instant kill if it connects with you. So that's kind of always looming in the background, pressing you forward, making sure you don't spend too much time collecting treasure to power up your character. So you'll definitely need a fine balance between collecting treasure and progressing through the dungeon. And throughout your runs, you'll also eventually be able to encounter different shops where you can buy items to power up your character and enhancing your abilities, which can help you succeed throughout the run. Now, in classic roguelike fashion, you're probably going to die a lot through this game. It can be quite challenging when you're first getting started, but thankfully there are some permanent power-ups, and so as you play through the different runs, you'll eventually be able to power up your character somewhat, but it definitely still has that overall challenge to the game as well. If you like highly addicting, challenging action platforming games with some great roguelike elements, featuring the classic Shovel Knight characters, I think you'll enjoy this game as well. The next game on today's list is Rivals of Aether. Now this is an awesome indie game that's sort of like a clone of Super Smash Bros. But in this game, you're playing as fully unique characters that takes place in a world of sentient animals and their different animal kingdoms that are also elemental based. And so you'll choose from a variety of characters to play through the game, but all of the characters are really cool concepts where you have like a lion that has fire abilities, a whale-like creature that can teleport through water puddles, a hawk-like character that has the ability to utilize the wind. Plus there's some other cool indie characters added to the list, like Ori and even Shovel Knight as well. And so as I mentioned, there's several different battle modes to the game. There's an overall story mode where you can unlock more of the backstory of each individual character and their kingdom and really their motivations. But you also have your standard battle modes that play out similar to Super Smash Bros. So again, as you damage characters, their percentages will go up, they'll fly farther, and you'll try and knock them off the screen and try and be the last player standing. It features offline local play as well as online play, and the online play is actually surprisingly competitive as well. It has a really cool 16-bit art style, so it's almost like if Super Smash Bros. Had came out on Super Nintendo. It kind of has that feel to it. It has incredibly tight and responsive controls, and the characters are really a lot of fun to play as well. So while it isn't Nintendo classic characters, I think they did a great job on the character design, and it is a lot of fun to play as these different characters. Overall, if you're looking for a really fun and addicting alternative to Super Smash Bros., I think this game is worth checking out. The next game on today's list is Kumajo Romelia Scarlet Symphony. Now I'm not gonna lie, I'm sure I butchered that name, but the game is part of the Touhou series, which is kind of a quirky anime shoot 'em up style game. But this time around, it's kind of like they took that bullet hell meets shoot 'em up and combined it with a Castlevania style action platformer. And so this time around, you'll play through trying to defeat the evil demons as the Scarlet Devil Mansion has appeared yet again, which is kind of an ongoing theme throughout this series of games. I don't really think the storyline is where this game shines. It is kind of confusing at points and a little bit vague, but you do reveal it as you explore through the game and meet other characters from the Touhou series. But it does have more of that classic action platformer, Castlevania type feel to it, versus a more modern Metroidvania style Castlevania game. And as I mentioned, it does kind of combine that action platforming with several bullet hell or shoot 'em up style elements. Because when you fight the bosses, they are incredibly challenging, and they have that bullet hell style element where they'll be firing projectiles all across the screen, and so you'll need to dodge those, unleashing your whip-like attack, your magic abilities, and more to defeat these challenging bosses. As I mentioned, it is very challenging, so definitely expect a hard game. And along with that, the game isn't crazy long. It's probably only going to take you a handful of hours to beat, but you will definitely die a lot and need to actually get pretty good at the game if you hope to beat it. And so I think that's where some of the playtime comes into it. But again, it is very reminiscent to more of a linear action platformer from the Castlevania series, so if you like that style of gameplay, I think this one could be worth picking up as well. The next game on today's list is Azure Striker Gunvolt 3. And this is another entry in the Gunvolt series, which are basically fast-paced 2D action platformers, really inspired by and modeled after the Mega Man X series. And so you'll definitely have that fast-paced action platforming throughout this entire game. Then this time around, you'll play as Kirin, a young heroine, as she goes on to take on a new threat of primal dragons and an evil organization trying to take advantage of the chaos caused by these massive dragons. And so for the most part, you're going to be playing as her throughout the entire game, but you will have a stamina bar that can eventually fill up, and you'll be able to unleash the powers of Gunvolt from the original games. And so it does have that cool balance between the two. And so your main character, Kirin, is going to use more of a melee type weapon, and as you defeat bosses throughout the game, you'll unlock additional abilities for that, like a downward strike and more powerful attacks as well. But as I mentioned, you can switch between the two at some points throughout the game, and Gunvolt plays a little bit more like the Mega Man type character, where they have more ranged attacks and abilities. You can also power up different equipable abilities throughout the game as you find different items, and so that can certainly make it a little bit easier, expanding your health bar and various things like that. But the game overall is quite challenging, so if you're looking for a great fast-paced action platformer, similar to the Mega Man X titles, I think you'll enjoy this game as well. The next game on today's list is Blaster Master Zero. Now this game is a remake of the classic NES title Blaster Master, and so they've really revitalized this game, but the general story is very similar. They've certainly expanded on it in this game, but in similar fashion to the original, you play as a young boy, Jason, that chases after his pet frog that dives into a cave underground. And in doing so, Jason discovers this massive futuristic tank, Sophia the Third, as well as a battle suit with futuristic weaponry. And so you'll actually explore this underground world as you try and take on mutated monsters while searching for your lost pet frog. And so the gameplay is kind of a combination of action platforming with some Metroidvania elements, as well as a top-down dungeon crawling shooter type game. And so throughout the game, you'll be exploring with your massive tank, but you can also jump outside of the tank and go into these little shooter-based dungeons. And as you explore, you'll find different power-ups for your gun ability, as well as different bombs you can use to take out enemies. And in these caves, they often feature challenging boss fights. And then throughout it, if you defeat these bosses, you'll unlock additional powers to help you explore the world further in your tank. And so you'll gain abilities for your tank, like the ability to climb walls, hover abilities, maneuverability underwater, missiles, and much more. And so again, it does have those cool Metroidvania elements, and it is really fun to explore this world. I think they made the game a little bit easier compared to the original NES version, but it does have extra content to the game as well. They've revamped the graphics, making it more 16-bit pixel art versus the 8-bit art from the original. And so if you like action platformers, Metroidvania games, and dungeon crawling, and a cool futuristic story, I think you'll enjoy this game as well. On top of that, all of the games in the Blaster Master Zero series are on sale right now. So if you're looking to play the entire series, they're all available on a massive discount right now. The next game on today's list is The Witcher 3. Now if you aren't familiar with the Witcher series, it's one of the best open world action RPGs in recent years. And you'll play as Geralt of Rivia, a witcher who's kind of a monster demon hunter for hire. And so you'll go on quests hunting down monsters alongside of searching for your adopted daughter Ciri as you explore this massive fantasy-based open world. Now the game, as I mentioned, has a massive story, hundreds of hours worth of gameplay, which is definitely super addicting and a lot of fun. If you like open world action RPGs, as I mentioned, this is one of the best in recent years and actually performs surprisingly well on the Nintendo Switch. It's on a massive discount right now, so if you haven't yet played The Witcher, I definitely recommend picking it up. The final game on today's list is Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2. Now this is the second entry in the Curse of the Moon series, which is the game series that is heavily inspired by and founded by one of the creators of the Castlevania series. So it definitely feels like one of those classic retro action platforming titles from the Castlevania series, very similar to Castlevania 3, where you'll have multiple playable characters that you can choose from and switch between throughout the game. And so this time around, you play yet again as Zangetsu, a sword-wielding warrior, as he goes on a quest to unravel the appearance of a mysterious tower that has yet again brought back a demonic castle. And so as I mentioned, you have a variety of playable characters to choose from, and you can switch between them on the fly. They all have their own unique abilities, unique magic powers, and ability to explore different areas throughout the stages. There's a ton of unlockables to power up your characters, branching paths, 2-player co-op, and so if you're a fan of retro action platformers, this is definitely one of the best, and I highly recommend picking it up. Well again, that wraps up our list of 10 new Nintendo Switch eShop sale deals worth buying. And if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button as it really helps out the channel. If you're going to pick up any of these games or have played them before, let us know your thoughts on them in the comments below. And if you'd like to help support the channel, pick out content and more, consider becoming a patron of ours at nerdproblemsgaming.com/Patreon. Another really cool way that you can help support the channel if you choose to is we actually recently partnered with a great game store, Nutmeg Games. And so if you want to help support the channel and pick up some great gaming merch, things like Pokemon cards, Magic cards, board games, and more, you can actually head to nutmeggames.com/nerdproblemsgaming or use the promo code nerdproblemsgaming and get 10% off your entire order, plus anything that you order helps support the channel as well. So if you want to check that out, pick up some great card games and board games and more, I'd recommend it. And if you like videos like this on video games, board games, and everything nerdy, check out one of our other videos here. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications to get the latest updates of new nerd videos we put out, and to make sure you don't miss out on any future sale videos so you can take advantage of these great deals. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you more soon.